Hello, I'm Tommy Moore from the Bartitsu Lab, and in this particular session we'll be looking at shiv works. How do we use small bladed articles as part of the lab? Now obviously in common self-defense scenarios, people have to defend themselves from these types of weapons all the time, from common kitchen knives to Stanley blades, and you can see my video on knife psychology elsewhere on the YouTube channel. Obviously, if you're in a good position where you can disarm and you can use a weapon, you need to make sure you know how it works. There's no point in us being a grapple with a knife on the floor and I deciding not to pick it up. I should probably use the game-changing weapon if the situation is life or death. So again, I always encourage people, knife defense is really important, but you also need to learn knife offense, because sometimes you will need to use it. If I've got it off you, I'm probably going to have to use it to end that confrontation if you don't leave the game. So I'm going to talk you through some of the techniques and maxims that we use in the Bartitsu Lab for using the knife. If you don't believe in the power of the knife, think about this. So W.E Fairbairn, the man that taught all the commandos and SOE in World War II, there is lots in his guides about how to disarm someone with a rifle, with a pistol. And he goes into great detail. When he says defending against a man with a knife that looks like he knows what he's doing, he says two options: run or kick him in the bollocks. Everything else will fail. So it lets you know that for many people, knives are scary, knives are deadly, knives can be deadlier than guns. So again, knowing how to use them, how to defend against them is very important. But some of the maxims of the Bartitsu Lab. So I've gone into some detail with other videos about knife usage in Bartitsu. We tend to keep the elbow in, keep the blade on point, we tend to turn it this way, slightly supinated, we tend to keep a tight boxer's guard. So I'll move on from those into some of the more advanced things that we do. So some of the most advanced things we do are in how we blend thrust to cut and cuts to thrust. So I'll give you an example. A lot of the work we do when we go cut to thrust, we'll fire, typically we'll go bigger than we normally would. If we're going to cut, we do a sharp cut, like so. We keep it nice and tight. In this instance, I'm doing a compound attack. I want to trick you. So I'm going to do a longer, more obvious cut, hoping to draw a defense from you. So I do a longer, more obvious cut. I retract that into the solar plexus and move that into a thrust. So cut into thrust. And again, because we're from a Western system, we tend to add a bit of a lunge to it. We bend our knee, we drive this in. So we fake the cut, we draw in, and we thrust. From here, fake the cut, draw in, thrust. Fake the cut, draw in, thrust. And again, we can do this up high. So we can fake the cut high, actually thrust to the liver, the spleen, the heart. Or we can do the other end. We can fake the cut low and actually thrust to the throat, to the eye. So again, varying the targets. Cut to thrust and cut to thrust. So high to low, low to high, really important. And that's on a forehand cut. On a backhand cut, we typically fake the circle. So we fake the backhand, we draw it in tight and we punch it out again. So typically if we're cutting backhand again, we'll just flick it out like an adder's tongue, and we'll cut across. In this instance, I want to fake you, I want to make you move. So I draw the elbow a little bit further across my body. Fake it this way, draw it in tight and thrust. So forehand, cut to thrust, backhand, cut to thrust. And again, that can be high to low, low to high. All really important facets of how we use the knife in the Bartitsu Lab. Just chucking it down, but again, train in the rain. You might fight in the rain, why not train in the rain? Okay, second move we look at is thrust to cut. So again, in this example, typically what I have guys do is thrust when they're slightly out of range. So I fake a long and clumsy thrust. Then I use a stepping motion to cut. So from here, I fake the lunge. I step forward with my left leg as I cut. And again, I thrust the weapon at the weapon's apex. I only do a small rotation into that cut. As soon as the thrust is out, it's a small rotation. I use my finger to guide it. Thrust, small rotation. Thrust, and again, we can cut backhand. So we go thrust, small rotation. I like it with a step. Thrust, small rotation. Thrust, small rotation. Again, it's all about the wrist work in this. Being able to generate power in short distances. Really important if you're using knife work. You shouldn't just be able to cut with a hewing motion. You should be able to cut very sharply, exploding your hips, exploding your shoulder, exploding your feet, like you would a powerful right hook. Same with the hook, same with the knife. So when we thrust, we typically go a bit longer, then we'll do a passing step into a wrist-bound cut. Again, these wrist-bound cuts are unlikely to be deadly unless you're really accurate. So often it's about compounding that with other things. So I fake the thrust, I get the cut, then I might get the clinch and get the final stab. Okay, so that's an important way. We cut to thrust, exaggerated cut, bring it in thrust, exaggerated cut, bring it in thrust, and we thrust to cut. So we exaggerate the thrust and step and cut. Exaggerate the thrust, step and cut. Useful things. Next thing you might want to look at is the stab and tear. So just opening up here, stab and tear. Typically when we're using the weapon, we stab it in and we want to be able to punch it out. The body tends to stick to these. As soon as they're in, the wound tends to close over it. So we want to be able to get used to the notion, stab, punch out, rip it out. So when we're training in the Bartitsu Lab, we get used to, if we imagine the thrust has gone in, we punch that out. We punch with our arm to remove the knife. Punch, stab, punch, stab. So again, we clear that weapon. I might do that multiple times. In, out, in, out, in, out. Again, you see this a lot to the throat, in, out, but also into the body, in, out. So getting used to be able to punch out of using the weapon. Again, it might seem macabre, it might seem a bit grotesque, but if your life depends on being able to use the knife, there's no point you stabbing once and then them stabbing you 3 times with their own knife. I need to be able to get this in, punch it out. Get this in, punch it out. These are really important aspects of how we use the knife in the Bartitsu Lab. And again, finally, making sure we can do compound attacks. So I get the guys used to cut, cut, thrust, thrust, cut, cut. Again, using those transitions from thrust to cut and cut to thrust means that I can vary things up. 1, 2, and the third one, I actually change that into a thrust. 1, 2, thrust. I might thrust, step, 1, 2. Thrust, step, 1, 2. So again, being able to vary cuts to thrust, thrust to cuts, very, very important. So to recap, we vary the angles of attack, high to low, low to high. So I fake high, stab low. I fake stab low, cut high. Vary those up. I vary up the stab and tear. Once it's in, I've got to be able to be in the habit of punching it out. And compound attacks, being able to vary cuts into thrusts and thrusts into cuts in multiples of 4, 5, 6, 7, because knife attacks are fast and frenzied. So you need to be able to move them in a fast and frenzied way. And that means mixing up forehand blows, backhand blows, forehand thrusts, backhand thrusts. And finally, just a simple thing, I say simple thing, another area that we look at is hand transitions, okay? These are pretty rare, but they're a good kind of dexterity exercise to get into, and sometimes we've been able to pull them off relatively easily in sparring too. So again, this might be a forehand cut into a transition into the left hand for a cut or a stab, okay? So a forehand cut, we bring that into the body because that's good practice anyway. We change our grip into this. There is some risk in changing the grip, but sometimes it can unlock surprising angles, especially if you use your feet, use your footwork. I might step, change, stab. Step, change, stab. What I can also do in this ice pitch grip is I can cut down, well stab down, bring it into my holster, essentially bring it to my body, and then raise here, okay? So I can cut down, I can then grip change here, like so. It's harder to get from this grip to a forehand grip, so bear in mind that once you change, changing back is a little bit more clumsy. There's ways to do it, but it's a lot clumsier. So again, grip switches, good for your dexterity. You can sometimes pull it off. It's not a high percentile technique, but it gets you used to handling, manipulating, and being aware of the blade. But I say, if you're going to practice at home, cuts to thrusts, thrust to cuts, compound attacks, these are all really useful things you need to learn. So thank you very much. Been a bit macabre, but it's raining, grey and cloudy, so it matches the mood.